All right, so I'm going to get started. I think this is mostly everybody that's available, so appreciate it. Just kind of like my monthly check-in on the what we referred to as the boomtown group, but um, my what and some of these questions may be repetitive to some because I've been a lot of what I'm trying to gather here. I've had some sidebar conversations, off the cuff conversations, just, as I engage each of you. So if it's repetitive to some, my apologies, but just trying to figure out how to best help everybody going into this fourth quarter here. And I would separate, I would make sure that because we refer to this as the Boomtown group, I would want to just say separate the CRM from the advertising, right? I mean, because it is two different things. Boomtown is a CRM, but the advertising is Google Ads. That's really what it boils down to. So I want to make sure that I'm not necessarily speaking to the CRM, or I'll be specific if I'm speaking to the CRM. But a couple things, like aha moments for me that I would just share with everybody over the last 30 days, let's just look at that window of time. One thing that I would just want to remind everybody that there is a huge difference between having a flexible schedule and having a free schedule, right? There is, and I think that the reason I share that is born out of a couple of conversations that I have. Number one, one of the reasons we all get into this kind of business is the flexibility that it offers us with a schedule. But I think the trap that we fall into in many, many cases, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody, right? So, and then I talk to other people and I'm like, well, you're guilty of it too. Is that we confuse flexibility for freedom. And, where I go with that thought, and I just challenge everybody to really kind of analyze it for how it pertains to each of you, is you still have to be devoted. And we've talked about this on Monday morning meetings. You still have to be devoted somewhere, but depending on the volume you want to create on the real estate side, somewhere between 15 and 20 hours a week of very busy work, where you're kind of in front of your computer, you're making phone calls, you're sending emails, you're creating advertisements, whatever that busy work might be. But there's somewhere between 10 and 20 hours that you cannot get away from. And then the rest of the time is devoted to either scheduling appointments and or answering your phone, like on a live call, right? I mean, or an email or a text or whatever that might be. And I think that where the challenge becomes, and this is where I go to whatever you're doing advertising, and include the Google ads into this, right? I would ask everybody an honest opinion on the percentage of time that you are immediately responding to a lead. I don't care where the lead comes from, right? I don't care if it's a Google ad. I don't care if it's a call in. I don't care if it's an email, a text message, or a walk-in. I don't care. But how often in a percentage of time, as it pertains to you as an individual, are you responding to that immediately? Right? Now, understand why I asked this. It's never going to be 100%. So I'm going to give some variables. The first question that you need to answer is, how many times are you answering that lead immediately when you scheduled yourself to be working? All right. So I'm going to reference a conversation I had with Dan Joyce yesterday, because Dan and I have known each other for a lot of years now as it pertains to real estate. So we kind of know each other's habits and can talk about it, right? If you're giving yourself Friday night off to go out to dinner and have a few drinks, you're removing that time. You're off. You are allowed to be scheduled off, right? But you can't be off all the time. You can't be off every Friday. You can't be off every Saturday, right? So there becomes this challenge of, when am I mentally scheduling myself for my busy work? And then when am I scheduling myself for availability? And then you got to factor in, okay, this is an inconvenient business. This is an extremely inconvenient business, right? So you're going to schedule yourself if you want to really ramp up. And I'm going to say this respectfully, based on the production in our group right now, you got to be scheduling yourself to be off maybe a day and a half a week. So now, again, what does that mean? And you don't have to take my advice. This is about you not coming to me and saying, I can't figure out why I'm not doing any business, right? So what I'm saying is, you're going to schedule yourself for busy work 10 to 20 hours a week, depending on what volume you want, which means you are doing nothing else but real estate. Nothing's on in the background. Laundry's not running. You're doing nothing but real estate in that 10 to 20 hour window. And then the rest of that time that you're available, other than that day or two that you're scheduling yourself off, you are solely available. And if that opportunity comes up, the blinders go on. Now, I would argue that there's not many people that concentrate enough to do that. So that's not an indictment on anybody. We haven't had this conversation, and you've got to ask yourself your question if you want to be that person. But my experience with salespeople in general is they don't do that. They don't schedule that 10 to 20. And then they definitely, when they're available, when the opportunity comes, they are not distracted. So an example, you're mentally telling yourself you're available this Friday evening. You're not going out to dinner. You're not going out for drinks, and you're going to be available till 9 o'clock, right? And you're watching TV, something's on, I don't know, the phone rings, and it's like, whatever. It just doesn't become a priority because it's hard. It's the flexibility that this business gives you makes it very difficult to turn that light switch on when you're just in your flex time. But that's your critical time for making money, right? So I go back to my question. How many people, are scheduling that 10 to 20 hours of busy time? How many people are scheduling their flex time, not allowing their schedule to be flexible? There's a big difference. And then you ask yourself the question, how often during my flexible time am I responding to leads immediately? Not in 2 or 3 minutes, immediately. And if the answer is not in the high 90% range, you can't gauge the value of your leads. You just can't gauge them, right? Now, again, there's going to be a percentage of leads that you're off, and you got to do that. There's a percentage of leads that, for whatever, like if I'm on this meeting and I get a lead, I can't answer it. So there's a percentage, right? And then you grade yourself out from there. But my guess is that based on the shift in the marketplace, based on statistics, that we're not in that high 90s on response time. I don't think we're I don't think that we're in the 10 to 20 hours of dedication work either, where we're just solely dedicated. Here's why I say that. Between July and now, we've had over or close to 600 leads. We've converted 2 to deals. So there's no way that percentage is right. This is a math. Sales is math, right? And you have to analyze the why. So you could, it doesn't, like when you're talking about lead production, it doesn't matter that there was a hurricane last week. That affects your busy work. And I'm willing to, I give that, right? But then you got to play catch up. But as far as lead gen goes, 600 leads in July, August, and September and the first 3 days of October in 2 deals, there's a problem with the sales force. Not every lead is good, but even if you said you got 600 leads, even if you gave yourself 20% for non-immediacy, flex time, you know, whatever that might be, whatever you want to call it, however you want to categorize that time, not unavailability, you're still in the 450 to 500 range for lead production. That's at least 5 or 6 deals of now leads. And then you get into, where's my follow-up? Because where's my follow-up leads? Because I didn't even go back to the first of the year because the numbers would be horrendous. But you got to remember, if you are getting 20 or 30, 10, 15, 20 leads a month, there's got to be one now deal. There's got to be. And then there's going to be, you know, 1 or 2 over the next 90 to 180 days. So then you're building momentum. So you're always, and then you kind of raise your now perspective, and then you've got that momentum of your follow-up, right? So the volume of leads, what it tells me that we have to address as a group are 2 things. Number one, you got it. Well, and I'm going to categorize some things here, but you got to have a sales mentality. You can't have a service mentality. I'm sorry, you can't have a service mentality. You serve the customer once they become a customer, and you're servicing to what their wants and needs are, but you're salespeople, right? So you got to have a sales mentality. And the sales mentality means on every engagement that you make, that you're asking for an appointment now. I don't care if they tell you that they're doing this in 3 months or 6 months or a year. You find out the why they're waiting, and then you try and schedule the time for now. Let's go out and look. Let me see your house, right? And I listen, that's not happening, right? That's definitely not happening. I hear good quality professional engagement, but I don't hear the $1 million question. When can we get together? Or can we get together this weekend? Let me show you 4. I know you're looking in a year, but let me get you out, show you 3 or 4 properties. And that way I know what you're looking for. And then when you meet them, you ask the $1 million question of, if I find the perfect property, is there any way we can move that time up? Almost 100% of the time you get a yes. And then you give them the tongue-in-cheek, well, there's no such thing as a perfect property, but let's see. You just cut through all the bull crap. But you got to ask for it first, right? Then you got to have the follow-up in place, and you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. You're doing the same thing. And so I start this gathering with that thought. And I would ask you all to honestly critique yourselves. Is it the quality of the leads we're getting? Or is it the way you're managing those leads that is leading to a lack of production? Because for me, I think it's a good CRM. I don't know, anybody on the call could try and convince me that this is not a good CRM, the boomtown CRM. So, I mean, if you don't think so, I'd love to have the conversation with you to find out why. Because listen, I everything that we talk about is about me engaging with you guys. So, I mean, I'd love to hear it if you disagree. And if you don't disagree, then we got to analyze the leads. Because if the Google leads are not good enough, I'm going to take the money from the Google leads and put it somewhere else. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that unless you're telling me that the standard that I just talked about is being met, right? And again, in no way meant to be disrespectful to anybody on the call, in no way to be an indictment of how hard you believe you're working or your level of professionalism. None of that. This is kind of like, to me, it's the rationalization that we didn't and this is somewhat on me, right? We did not have to have this conversation from January of 2021 until May of 2022. Just didn't have to have it, but we should have had it, right? Because if you go back to January of 2020, right, the market was such that everybody was kind of trudging along, doing a good job, realtoring 101, and your level of success was yes or no, depending on what you were doing. Then the pandemic hits, it shuts down. And I could tell you that our group, I can only speak for our group and those that were with us at that time. We went into a very dedicated mode of communication, conversation, and activity. And our group did very, very well while everybody was shut down. Did very well. I'm sure others did, but I only care about our group. And then we got into the surge, right? Like that, I think it started like January, February of 21 and held through May of 2022. And in that point, the business changed dramatically. But what I just described is Realtoring 101, right? So my question is, and if anybody's willing to share, I'd appreciate it. If not, I'd ask you to text me individually on the side and just tell me where you grade yourself on that. Do you give yourself and grade yourself A through F, right? On that very basic thing. And then in that same response, tell me, is it the ads, or do we need to take more time to see if it's the ads, to see if it's our behavior with the ads? I got to figure that out because I want to help you guys do business, right? That's the whole point of me spending the money on the advertisement. Yes, I'm going to get a referral fee, but I got to tell you, I'm losing, like right now, I'm losing money on the deal, right? That's just a fact. But the idea behind it was to be a mutually beneficial situation. But if the money being spent is not where it's supposed to be, I'll move it to somewhere else, right? So I really need that feedback from you as to if you're not grading yourself as a B+ or greater, then we don't know if the ads are any good, right? And my guess is, and again, I'm not an indictment, my guess is that if you grade it based on the following criteria: A, dedicated work time; B, dedication to the available time and response time. That goes hand in hand, right? C, dedicated to a consistent messaging in your follow-up and a consistent follow-up. If you can't give yourself a B+ on all of those or better, we don't know what we've got with the leads. So I got to figure that out. And I can only figure that out if you're willing to be honest with me about being honest with yourself. And then if you take it from there, if you need one-on-one help from me, I'm more than willing to do that because everybody's issue might be different. Right now, we're speaking in generic. And look, you could quit the real estate business and go sell something else, and it's the same conversation. What we're talking about right here has nothing to do with the real estate market. This is sales, right? Asking for the deal, asking why not, trying to overcome the objection, put a good follow-up plan in place. That's sales, period. You sell anything. You go sell matchsticks, it's going to be the same thing. And if you, quite frankly, and I hate to say this, I'll use a really bad joke, but if you employ this project, right, you could sell fucking cigarettes to a cancer patient, right? Because you're overcoming the objections. You're taking the attempts at it, right? So you got to grade yourself on that. And then you determine what is determined by how much your work ethic is, or what's determined by how many hours a week you got to work in the dedication and in the flexible is really predicated on how many deals you want to do. And then you got to turn the lead deal off because you don't want to waste leads. If everybody in the group registers out at a B- or less, we have no way of knowing and this is whether you're getting leads from me or any of your sources. You don't know what they're worth. Because if you miss one lead, your percentages drop precipitously and in a much greater fashion, because you're none of us on this call are smart enough or lucky enough or have the crystal ball to be able to know which one of those 500 leads or which 10 of those 500 leads are the now buyer. So if you miss the now buyer, we may now have to get 700 leads to get the same production. That's how amazingly important this self-analysis is. So I'd just be curious if anybody on the call is willing to share honestly, and then you could go back and grade yourself, where you would grade yourself in that, with that kind of, that basic scenario that I laid out.
Okay, I'll go first. Tony, I just didn't know if you could hear
Go ahead.
me.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I'm not gonna, I'm just gonna be completely honest. I would give myself a B, not a B plus, not a B minus right now. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, and I think I'm very, very quick to respond. Okay.
Okay. Like
I literally take my phone into the bathroom and set it, when I'm in the shower, I will grab my phone. Okay. Because I understand how important that is. I think I tend to get discouraged because I would say 90% of the time when I call someone right away, they don't answer. Okay. I leave a message and then I follow up with a text immediately and then an email or whatever. But I mean, I have to say I'm working on some really good leads, but and I haven't been with you that long, as you know.
Right.
But okay. And most of my leads are people that are out of town. I've only had a couple that are in this within an hour.
Okay.
Or in Florida. Okay.
Okay.
So, and a lot of those people are planning on coming in, December, January. So I'm building myself up for that. But I can't lie and say I haven't gotten discouraged, and sometimes I beat myself up, because I'm like, well, but I mean, I have a game plan. I want it to happen quicker. I'm very impatient, but yeah, I would say that right now, and mainly it's because, I do have my other job, which I have to support myself until things, till I don't have to have it anymore. Right. But, so I can't give myself an A or a B plus right now. I'm going to.
Yeah. And I think so. And I appreciate that honesty, and to be honest, to follow up, I love the analysis of it. That's the kind, everybody on the call, if you're not doing that, can really, I think, learn from that self-analysis, that self-awareness. And the one thing that I would share with you, Mary, and then share it to anybody else that applies, is I think that the tendency, if you want to call it that, to get discouraged, right? Or to fight discouragement is a challenge for salespeople. And it's definitely a challenge if what you're saying, and I believe it to be true just in the limited time we've been together, you do have an urgency about you. You have an aggressiveness about you that's professional, maybe different than other people on the call, and they can analyze themselves. So I think when you're like that, it is, there is the potential for the discouragement. So that goes back to, and what I will say is, what you have to grade yourself on, if you are adopting some of this psychology that I'm talking about right here, is not always the result, but your commitment to what you're doing. So to your point, if you are doing that, if you are making it, and I believe you are, I'm not questioning that, right? But if it's generic, if you are making it inconvenient, you're taking the phone to the restroom with you, you're taking the phone in the bathroom when you're showering. I mean, I do that. Like, listen, you guys, I take your calls like when I'm shaving and brushing my teeth or whatever it might be, you know? So if you're doing those things, the important thing is you should be then able to, it should not be discouraging, because you can say to yourself, I'm doing everything I can to capture the now, right? You can't. So if you are grading yourself on the result, you're going to get discouraged, because we're going to fail. The ratios are not great. I mean, you're still, even if you're doing a great job, 30 to 40, like I'm talking about maybe a 20%, 25% conversion rate to prospect to a customer, right? And then you might go from, now you got a customer base, and that might go to a 35 or 40% to a client. And then you might get that to a 70% to a deal. So when you start looking at that kind of where the ratios go, they go up as the lead goes down the road. But there's a lot of failure in there if you're grading, if you're just saying, hey, I got to talk to them, I got to get a deal out of it. That's going to make you miserable. So not suggesting you're doing that, Mary, but I just want to be clear to everybody that the grade is as it goes along, right? The first grade is, am I doing what Mary said? Am I making it an inconvenient business for myself that I'm available for these calls whenever they may come? Am I making that attempt to reach them? Am I doing that aggressive follow-up, following up the call with a text and an email? And then am I trying to call back? If you're doing all those things, part one's an A+. Part one's an A+. And then you go to part two with your follow-up. Then you analyze what happens with the ones you talk to. Am I asking for the deal? Am I asking for the appointment now? Then you grade yourself on that, because you might do an A+ on the inconvenient, but you may not be asking for the appointment now on every customer. So then you got to grade yourself there. And then if they say no, do you ask again, or do you just roll over and play dead? And if they say no, then is asking for a now appointment on every follow-up, or giving them a reason to make it a now follow-up, now appointment on every follow-up. Are you doing that? And you grade that. And then you come back with your overall grade. So I think I love the way that Mary, I know Mary was in the car business, I could tell. I love the way that Mary analyzed what she's doing, because that's exactly how you have to do it. Hey, I'm doing this first part. I'm an A+ on this first part. But then I'm letting the result of that first part kind of get me down in the dumps. And then it's affecting me on the first part. Right? And that's where, without pitching anything, that's where getting into the office, getting on these roundtable calls can help avoid the discouragement. Right? And you do that. I'm not saying you don't do that. But for everybody else, there's a reason why I can do everything I do from my kitchen. I don't really take leads. I don't go out occasionally I'll go out and look at a building or something like that. There's nothing that I can't do from my house. But if I stay in my house, I can't fight the doldrums. And then the hard part's getting out of that. And then I miss my freaking opportunities. So I set myself up, take a shower, get myself ready, go to the office, sometimes have really effective, efficient, great conversations with you guys. Sometimes have some stupid bullshit, talk about how bad the Cowboys are and how Dak Prescott's an average quarterback. And that makes me feel good. And then I leave and go do whatever else I'm doing, So that's the challenge. So thanks, Mary. I mean, it's a really great perspective. Anybody else willing to kind of tell me where they think they're at or what's going on with them as it pertains to that?
Tony, I agree with you about the Dallas and how Dak is. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, thank you, Dan. And as always, we do agree on the important things. Thank you. And Mike's pissed off now because we're talking about football on a work call, but just to let you know. Anybody else? So guys, if you could, if there's nobody else, all I'm asking you to do, really, all I'm asking you to do is step back from this call, do a little bit of self-awareness, self-analysis, and shoot me a text so that I can determine, do I got to look for an alternative to these leads? And I also like the one point that Mary made is the lion's share, like what percentage of these leads are just completely out of town, and how many have people coming in from these Google leads that think they've got something coming in, you know, in the next 90 to 120 days. I'm really trying to figure out how that, like, do I got to switch where I'm looking for leads, right? So
Tony,
helping you as sales guys and sales gals, and then figuring that out. Go ahead, Kristen.
Yeah, so I appreciate you bringing this up, because I feel like I know that this is somewhere that I can really improve on, and I kind of need the encouragement. And so what I think as far as my like performance, I would say I would put myself at an A with the calling right away, texting, emailing. I am kind of a big nerd, and I look at the vitals on my boomtown, and I can see like the lead engagement, the percentage for how, you know, I rank as far as how many people, the percentage of phone calls, emails, texts that I get, And I also like to look at the amount of time. So I'm always watching that to measure, like I'm trying to get that amount of time down to a lower amount of time. And so that's kind of fun for me, because I like to kind of geek out on that. But I would say for the follow-up, I would get a C, maybe even lower than a C. I've been doing those emails that you suggested. I haven't been doing them weekly. I would say I'm doing them every 2 to 3 weeks. And for me, that feels like a lot. And I know that the goal is to do it weekly. But for me, this is a start. And I've been really pleased with the responses that I've received. Like today, this lady emailed me back. I hadn't heard from her in the longest time. I'd called her, texted her, sent her a letter, like a handwritten note, and she responded to the email I sent. And I was like, oh my God, she's still alive. I didn't even know that, you know? So it's cool to see that. And also, like, I've been sending out, like when I've had a listing, I just send it out to the whole group, and they, like, people will respond like, you know, I'm not looking for this. This is what I'm looking for, whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, you know, that's fine. Like, at least you're responding to my email. So I have found that to be good and very useful. And, you know, after a very long time doing this, I, you know, feel good that I'm starting to get those emails out. And I have just recently started asking for the appointment on calls. And I have to admit, it feels a little awkward, like, especially when people tell me, like, I talked to this boomtown lead. She's in New York, and she's like, yeah, we're looking like probably 2 to 3 years out. And so I'm like, I knew she liked this place. I'm like, well, you know, would you like me to go show it to you? And I know she's in New York, and I tell her I can do virtual showings, whatever. And she's like, I'm not sure, whatever. But, you know, at least I'm asking. And then I haven't followed up with her, which I need to do to follow. Well, actually, I did call her, but I did contact her yesterday, but I haven't followed up with her on getting that appointment. So, like, to me, it's kind of fun to see where all this goes. And I can say that, like, for my lead engagement, I've gotten to talk to 30% of the leads I call on the phone, 20% response rate for texts, and 2% response rate for emails. So I think, like, that helps me realize that the phone calls are really the best way to get people, if I can get them on the phone. And I think for me, like, where I get caught up is I have all these conversations, and then not like I'm having a ton of them, but when I have conversations with people, you know, what I could be doing better is really looking for those properties that they want and really matches your needs, you know, because I feel like there's so many people that are looking for different things. And I think that's where I could really improve, is being like, okay, this is what we need to look at or whatever. And then also like what Mary said, just feeling like so many people are, sorry, there's a plane going over. So many people are like out of town, or like, oh, we're 2 to 3 years out, whatever. And so it just makes me feel like, oh yeah, well, one year we'll get something going for this person, you know? So I appreciate what you've been telling us about Get On Them Now and stuff. And I think there was something else I was going to try to mention. I'm trying to also grade myself, like on the conversations that I have, like you've been mentioning, Tony. Like I went and met a FISBO the other day, and he was like the last 2 people I met, actually, they were like, yeah, we're gonna list it with a friend, you know, and I'm like, okay, you know, and and he was like, yeah, I don't like giving away my money. And at that point, I should have said to him, well, what's your friend charging you for commission? And I should have said, I can list it for $500. But I didn't. And I just was like, okay, all right, well, you know, I'll see if I have any buyers. And then I left, and I was like, oh, I could have been stronger. You know, I could have come back at him with that. And so I'm just trying to, like, you know, not be too hard on myself, but also like grade myself on these conversations. And I think it's helping me. So yeah, I think that's all.
So just tying in on a couple of things that Kristen said. So thanks again. And I it's great that you gals are willing to really be honest about it, because I think it's hard sometimes. So the funny thing is the vitals, and I didn't bring it up, right? Like, and that's where I think a lot of people on the call are not taking advantage of the CRM. Look, I can look at the vitals and tell you that I can't grade the quality of the leads, because we're at the bottom percentile on just about everything as a group. That's not saying any one person's doing a good job or not, but, you know, if you look at, like, there's a couple things that, and these are rhetorical questions that, like, because they probably apply to all. So, like, to Kristen's point, you know, I'm getting great responses on the follow-up that I'm doing every 2 or 3 weeks. I know I should be doing it more, but that seems like a lot. But I like the responses. Like the contradiction there is amazing if you're willing to look at it. If I find something I know is working, I'm going to do it over and over and over and over again. I'm going to juice it up. Like, if it's working, like if things I do have the tendency to discourage me, why wouldn't I double down on the things that are working? So that's a rhetorical question for everybody. The second part is, look, the vitals that Kristen mentioned tell the story of every training call that I go on. Emails are the least effective way to communicate. 2% read rate, right? Text messaging is better, but you're going to get your result with a phone call. You know, so if you know that, then you're going to try and improve those percentages. Doesn't mean you're not going to send an email, but I'm going to make sure that every email I send somehow gets a text message and a phone call with it. You know, text message might go to the entire group. The phone call might be to the ones that engage it. So again, one of the reasons why I think Boomtown is such an outstanding CRM is because of the ability to analyze this stuff in real time and know who to call by looking at the artificial intelligence. I don't know that we're using it like that. I don't think that we are, on the whole, right? And when I say we're not doing it, if you're only doing it occasionally, you're only doing it 50% of the time, 60% of the time, That's not doing it. This kind of sales analysis, sales work ethic only works if you're really committed to it, right? So you got to look at that. So I think that the other conversation with the other part of Kristen's points that I would make, and they're very brief, is number one, when you hear the customer give you the objection of time. I'm 2 to 3 years out. I'm 2 to 3 months out. I don't care what it is, other than, hey, I'm looking right freaking now. Because again, that's going to be a very small percentage. Hey, Kristen, thank God you called me at the right time. I've been looking for a realtor to just ask that question. I want to go out and look at houses today. You're not going to get that answer very often, right? You're just not. But where you might get that answer is, hey, why are you waiting 2 or 3 years? What if I could help you find a way to do that now? What if I could buy a house now and put a tenant in it for the 2 or 3 years, so you're buying it at today's prices and today's rates instead of whatever it might be 3 years from now when we're looking at a 10 to 15% raise in price. So, I'm not saying that's, but just asking the why, right? And then trying to overcome it. And then when you can't overcome it, you just put them into your long-term follow-up and you don't fret over it. It's just making that attempt that's so critical, right? So they're my takeaways from Kristen's kind of analysis. And look, that's the whole point. The whole point on the nerd part of it, that it's a mechanical coach, right? Those vitals are a mechanical coach. I can see what's going on with I can honestly grade my performance. It's not arbitrary. It's telling you, right? If you're using it. So good stuff. And again, I think that's everybody can learn from that and use whatever part of that they want. Anybody else that wants to tell me tell us what their experiences are, what they're seeing or what they're feeling.
Hey, I have a question.
All right.
So how many times, do you think is a good time? I've always been the 8 touch rule guy, because I learned that early on. And how many times do you think we should be once we get to 8 or 9 touches, and clearly you're saying emails are not that effective, although some people do occasionally respond to the emails, but for the most part, you're right. Emails really, no one's really opening them. I mean, occasionally, and they're not really responding back that way. So let's just take that out of the equation and just talk about texting and calling. What is the frequency you would do, and how many touches before you say, would you just leave them in Boomtown? Would you send them to trash, or what would you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no exact science, right? I mean, that's the first part of that answer that's so frustrating. I wish there was. I think so. A lot of this goes back to the initial point. You got to grade yourself on your that first attempt to contact. Are you immediate? Because if you're not, all the grading of it goes out the window, right? I mean, you everything falls down from there. So then the next part of it is, I'm probably going to take it. Part of it is affected by how many leads I got. What I'm trying to do is ensure myself of the immediate conversation. Then I'm trying to figure out, is this a now, nurture, or never? If I can't determine where it is, it's going into nurture until I figure out it's a never. I mean, I'm never putting it into trash unless the guy tells me, look, you fucking idiot, leave me alone. I mean, that's the only way. That's the only way they're going into trash.
Gotcha.
Because that, to Kristen's point, that's the one that, I thought this person was dead, and then they're responding to me. You don't know, but if there's no cost in keeping them, why am I getting rid of them? I mean, that's
no. And I agree with that. So when I'm getting rid of them, it's they're cutting me off in text message. I've called them 3 or 4 times and they're not answering their phone.
Then I just put them into my long-term nurture. I'm not throwing them away unless they tell me to leave them alone.
Yeah, and some of them do, and
I mean, there's an unsubscribe button on everything we do.
That's exactly what I do. I unsubscribe them and then I put them in trash when I know that they don't want to be. They're basically telling me stop.
Yeah, that's when you stop. But buy or die. Buy or die, or they tell me to leave me alone. I mean, look again. I'd like to say there's an exact science to it, but you got it. Like everybody's got to get their own personal rhythm. But that personal rhythm is based on, what else? Like if I've got nothing to do, I better this is the hard part in sales, and it's definitely the hard part in what we do because you get the freedom flexible thing, right? I got nothing to do. What do I want to do? Well, shit, if I'm honest, I want to go play golf, right? That's what I want to do. But if I go play golf every time I got nothing to do, I'm not going to have any money to go play golf. So, that's really, I don't think that I'm special. I think that I suffer from all these same things that we're talking about. It's just being really aggressive to your cause. When you think you're grading the customer, they're not grading themselves. When you think they're an out buyer, you're aggressively pursuing. When you think they're a never buyer, you got them in your long-term follow-up. When you think they're a nurture buyer, you've got them in a category when you think they're going to pop based on the communications that you're having. And then you gear everything accordingly, because at some point that nurture that you've got a timeline on is moving into your now category. These people told me they're coming in January. Well, if they're coming in January, boy, November, I'm going to start hammering because I want to ensure that I got them in January.
Yeah.
So that's the, like, I wish that I had, and I mean this sincerely, I wish that I had a more definitive answer. But if you go by my car guy days, it's you bother until they buy or die.
Right. I got you.
The one thing I've also been thinking about regarding, the different ways to get people to respond is apparently video is the way that you get the most responses, bomb or something like that. So, I've been thinking about this for years, like potentially getting something like that and sending a video.
Listen, you could put, I'm fairly certain, and you guys can correct me. I am fairly certain you can do an autoresponder with Boomtown that is a video clip of you saying, hey, this is Kristen. Thanks for visiting my website. I appreciate it. I'm attempting to call you right now. Please take the call. And then even if they don't take the call, they put a name to a face. They realize you were on the website, and then you can go from there. But listen, all the data says the video is important in your messaging. So how you integrate that in, again, personal. Is everybody going to answer it? No, because when I send you all a bomb video, I know who's looking at it and who's not, Dan. Yeah, I think video is important, but not everybody's going to open it, right, Dan?
I listened to all your videos, Tony, twice.
I'm just kidding, Dan.
Tony, I got to jump off, okay?
See you. Good luck. Okay, we'll see you later. You can watch the rest. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
So, anybody else? Did I answer that, Mike? I know it wasn't very definitive, and I apologize for that. I wish I had a clearer answer.
No. You were helpful. That's fine. Yeah, absolutely.
All righty. Dustin, you got anything you'd like to add as I think you're our seasoned pro here. You and Danny, Danny Joyce really is the senior man on the call, but.
I'm 3 months in on this. I've made some good connections. I think I've told you this already. I'm getting a lot of that same thing. They're out of town. They're coming down here in the next few months. The good thing is I am actually speaking to a lot of these people on the phone through text messages stuff. So they are engaging. So I'm hopeful there. I am there, getting discouraged, but trying to stay, you know, positive. Like you said, I've been in this business this long, so we all hit a slump or two. And, you know, it is definitely a different game that we're playing now than we were before. So,
what are, if I can ask Dustin, because again, you know, you've got enough experience to really have a good perspective on this. And certainly your evolution as a realtor, you know, is there. So where are you getting discouraged, or why are you getting discouraged?
Well, I don't have anything in the works. So,
okay. So
yeah.
if I may just engage, are you asking for the now appointment? Because you and I have had this conversation. So I'm just curious.
I always do. I like, even with the out of town people, I'm doing the same thing. Hey, I'll shoot you a video. I'll call you from there. Like, I don't mind going to these properties. I don't even care if they're home. Like, we're selling houses. Like, it's an inconvenient business. It's inconvenient. I don't care. I will go at 8 o'clock at night and show you this house, you know, and then, you know, like, I'm here, let's go. So, like I said, I am getting a lot of good feedback that people are like, I'm excited to meet you when I'm there. So it sounds like I have a lot of future appointments. I do have 2 buyers looking now. One, their deal fell apart, but that was on Open Door, the listing agent. They had a building code violation and we just decided not to extend. So they're actually going to start looking again next week. And then I have a past client that's looking. So, but
okay. I love what Dustin's saying there. And if I could chime in and just make a suggestion to everyone, right? So, and it comes in that critical part there. And I don't even know if you realize you did it or not, Dustin, but like, and I've heard Dustin say this over the course of time. I'm working with these 2 now. I'm expecting these 2 in the future. It's really good wherever you're putting it so that you could, like, this is my answer to avoiding discouragement, right? Another little mind game that I used to play with myself and still do. Have your calendar, like have a generic calendar. We're in October, November, December, January, right? And on that calendar should be, these are the people I'm expecting to work with and get under contract in October. These are the deals that are closing in October. These are the people based on my communications that I think I'm going to be showing in November. These are the deals that are closing in November. And when you have that as a visual, not in your mind, but as a visual, it tells you that all that, because remember, I just talked about you're doing 10 to 20 hours worth of busy work. That's your payday for your busy work. You don't necessarily get a check because you did all your busy work. Eventually you do. But the check becomes the bonus, right? That calendar is your payday. That calendar that I just described to you, what Dustin described in a different way, that's your payday for your busy work, right? And then you're reveling in the fact when you're looking at that, now you know how to plan your flex schedule. And, you know, then you're setting a target for how many, like if I want to do 3 closings a month, I know I better have 5 appointments. It's about right. So if I know I got 2 people I'm working, like Dustin, I think you and I talked about 2 to 3 units a month. So it's probably 4 appointments a month, right? Would put you at your goals. And if I'm wrong, I apologize. I'm not looking at my notes, but so Dustin wants to do 2 to 3 units a month. He needs to have 3 to 4 appointments in a month. So now Dustin doesn't wake up on October 1st and go, holy fuck, I got nothing working. Excuse my language, but I get excited about that stuff, right? Dustin goes, well, I already got 2 of the 4 appointments I only need 2 more appointments. I can really drill down on this. How do I get 2 appointments? It might be as simple as an open house. Right?
Which I'm doing this weekend.
There you go. And I didn't know that, right? So perfect timing. And that would be my follow-up. If most of my deals are out of town and then they're future, well, you got to figure out a way to get some now business. Best way to get now business is an open house. Best way to get your amount of lead contacts up. That's where your local business is or your now business is. So you're building these buckets. So again, this is another situation And believe me, it's why I'm spending the time on it, because in every conversation I've had virtually in the one-on-ones in the last couple of weeks, it's getting people's heads out of their tails, right? Because there's a level of frustration and discouragement in the shift in the market. But what I find is if we grade ourselves on the behaviors that avoid that, we're not really doing the things we need to do. And I will tell you this. It's funny. I was having a conversation with Sydney, who is here right in the background here, the other day, and she told me about two agents' conversations that she had, and both agents professing that they were slow. Okay. Well, if I have that conversation with an agent, I might ask to define what you mean by slow, right? Because that could be different for everybody. And me, I'd rather be efficient than busy. So, I mean, I got to figure out who I'm talking to and what their definition is. For those that have been with me long enough, they almost subscribe to that theory. So I always have to figure it out. We really don't want to be like working 70 hours a week. We want to work a really good 25. And then maybe a couple people mess us up and make us go on appointments, right? But the two agents that said they were slow probably didn't spend 2 weeks in Florida for the month of September. Right? So they're traveling, they got time off, all that's good. Well, I am a firm believer that 1 equals 3. So if you take a day off, you got 3 days to catch up. And I'm talking about busy work because flex time and appointments, they're going to fit in there anyway. But if you take a day off from your due diligence work, your busy work, you got 3 days worth of catch up. Well, if you miss 2 weeks of the month, you've been off for a month and a half. It's going to take you 6 weeks to figure out how to get your groove back. That's why what I talked about at the opening of this discussion is critically important. 10 to 20 hours a week worth of very deliberate time, and then being very committed to your flex time, meaning you can be doing what you want, but to Mary's point, and it's kind of funny to use it, if that phone rings and I'm in a bathroom, I'm going to take the call. You know, like, I mean, it sounds crazy, but, and maybe you don't have to go to that degree, you know, but I mean, it's a great, that's your choice. Don't tell the customer what you're doing. If you do, I mean, you know, just kind of fake it. But I mean, the degree of that is very important to analyze. But if you're not doing that consistently, it's really simple. 2 times 2 equals 4. It's never going to change, right? You take a week off, you're going to be slow for a month. Unless you've got all this backlog in place, unless you've got that calendar going, you can minimize that damage, right? Because I'm not sitting here telling you in any way, shape, or form, do not take time off. I will never, ever, ever be that guy. I will never tell you you don't deserve your time. I am a big believer in balance to be good and to be productive. But it's critically important that when you're on, you're on. And that's where I think we're probably not at our peak performance. So, and then, oh, by the way, like, you know, I'm gonna use Lane as an example. You know, listen, you do have other priorities, and I'm not telling you not to have other priorities. What I'm telling you to do is maximize the time that you are working on the business and grade it accordingly. So if Lane's taken care of at 9-month-old, she can't take a phone call. I would not want her to take a phone call. But then I don't want Lane to give herself a D, right? She's not really working then. Well, no offense, Lane. I know you're working. That's not what you're working on something different than real estate. There you go. There you go. There we go.
Hard to answer the phone.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. So, but that doesn't give you a D when you're committed to something else. You grade yourself and you commit yourself to the time that you want to commit to this business, and you maximize that. That's how you propel yourself forward. And it all starts backwards. I want to make X amount of dollars a year. I got to do X amount of units a month. How many appointments do I got to have? And they go from there. So it goes back into that. But I think that my takeaway on the call is we probably got to fine tune our workday behaviors. You define workday how you want to define it. That's not for me to define, and I don't want to define it. We gotta be more deliberate and define and commit to our workday behavior, our deliberate time and our flex time. And then my takeaway is we got to try and figure out a way, whether as a group or individually, to get some more now business. And I mean, I think, well, local now business. So we'll add that into some of our Monday calls. But I would start with open houses. That's cheap and it's effective. And then I would challenge everybody. The last thing I would challenge everybody on is the calendar, to grade your results. Who are you working with for this month? Who you got closing this month? Does that tie into your goals? And what do you got to accent? Because look, you might want to take some time off in November. Well, then that means you got to work harder in October, and you're going to have to work a little harder in December. You can't go back to normal. There is catch up and balance there. And it doesn't necessarily mean a lot more time. You might have to add an hour here, an hour there, whatever. So, and I'm more than willing to help anybody that's struggling with that to kind of formulate a plan for yourself. I think Kristen takes advantage of that probably more than anybody, like having an idea, bouncing it off me, and we kind of fine tune how it works for her, and then she executes. And I think, I'm all the credit to her, the growth in her business model and where she's at. Doesn't mean she's getting the results she wants or anything like that. I think Dustin does the same thing a little bit differently because him and I will powwow just off the cuff in the office. Some people are more engaging than others for whatever reason, and I respect that. But these are the things I think we have to address. And I would leave you with this thought, and then I'd open the floor up to anybody if they have anything else. Look, I don't care what you say to me or what you share with me or anything like that. I'm here to support you if you want my support and help. What I do care about is don't bullshit yourself into being discouraged when you're not being honest with yourself. You got to look in them. You got to answer. You are the CEO of your self-employment business. You can't lie to yourself, guys. Kristen's point, the vitals in Boomtown don't lie. I mean, she can analyze what she's doing. You all have that tool at your disposal. You can all answer the questions that I've asked, whether you answer them to me or you answer them to yourself. But if you're not honest with yourselves about it, you will never, ever, ever reach your ultimate numbers. So it's a game of great flexibility and the fight against distraction. And, honestly, distractions become excuses. And, it's a sales game. This is a sales game. If you don't believe that, we need to have a one-on-one because it's a sales game. And if you're not employing sales skills, you're a customer service rep, and customer service reps do 5.6 units a year. That's about what it boils down to. So they're doing the deals by accident, And I don't think anybody like that's here. I think there's some fine tuning that needs to be done, but that's a scoop. So anybody got anything else they want to add, anything they want to share, anything that I can answer to for the group? If not, we'll close it out. All right, cool. Hey, I'll leave you on this 2 notes real quick. please remember, you know, even if these people come to you pre-qualified, I really stress that you get their pre-approvals verified with Sydney. I really encourage that behavior. Secondly, and this will be my only, guys, the floor time stuff is driving me crazy. Just to make everybody aware, it's driving me crazy. And I'm just asking for a little bit. Again, you know, we can do a schedule. Floor time is not mandatory, right? It's not mandatory. It's there as an opportunity, like every other opportunity. To me, I could do my busy work during floor time. I do diligence work worth of floor time, and I might just get a lead out of it. It's there as an advantage. If you don't want it, please don't take it. And if you switch shifts, which is what our policy is, we do a schedule. You guys move your shifts around. But if you switch shifts, please make sure you man those shifts. Or get with Callie and me ahead of time. 3 times last month I came down here. 4 times last month I came down here, and nobody was here. That's a reflection on me if somebody tries to get in, and I don't want to look like that. And again, all I'm asking for is an attention to what you commit to, right? And communication if you can't honor that commitment in enough time that we can shuffle. That's all I'm asking. No indictment on anything. Shit happens, I get it. But don't let it just fly under the rug. Please make it important to yourself. That's all I can ask. So thanks to everybody for taking the time. I'm definitely here to help you guys. I got some ideas of what I got to do for you. And if you can think of anything, let me know, okay? Thank you. Have a great day. See you.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Bye.